What's good, y'all? Marcus Frazier from Teachable Tuesdays here to motivate you, encourage you, and inspire you to be a better you. Thank you for joining me today. Greatly appreciate it. As always, if you could, please hit the like button, subscribe button, hit the notification button so that way you can stay up to date with all of my future Teachable Tuesdays content. We'd like to welcome you to episode 9 of the New Life series. We have 2 more episodes to go. And then after that, we're going to be done with, the series. And we're also going to be done with the series or any series for just a little bit while. We'll resume at some point. But I'm going to be giving you guys some different forms of content and whatnot moving forward. So if you haven't checked out the playlist, make sure you check it out so you can see any episodes that you've missed. For the most part, you don't necessarily have to check them out in any chronological order, if you will. But it might help to start from the beginning just so you can have some context of the different things that I'm talking about. Today, we are going to be talking about relationship mindset, right? Relationship mindset of the New Life series. And I'm going to be bringing you into my world of, when I say relationship, I'm talking about romantic relationships, right? So for my people who are in a romantic relationship, who desire to be in a romantic relationship, whatever the case may be, maybe you're not interested, but you just like hearing about this type of stuff, this is for you. So here we go. Romantic relationships. Now, as of the recording of this video, I'm going to say that my mindset with romantic relationships has changed quite a bit. But I'm actually going to start from the beginning so you can kind of get an understand of why my mindset has always been the way it is, the times where it kind of shifted slightly, and what am I thinking about today. So I've always been, what's that song called? Mr. Loverman, Shabba. That was always me ever since I was a kid. I was always interested in girls. I was girl crazy when I was a kid. Don't know why, I just was. Well, besides the fact that I just like the opposite sex. Hey, whatever. So, I remember going back to kindergarten, and some of y'all going to think, oh, that's so adorable. I look back and kind of cringe at it. But I remember playing tag with a girl, quote unquote, that I had a crush on. 2 girls I, quote unquote, had a crush on when I was like 5 years old. And I remember them saying, hey, I'll let you be my girlfriend if you can catch me. And I would chase them, and I would never catch them. And please remember this story because this is going to come in handy later on. I never was able to catch those 2. Just didn't happen, right? I'm not going to say their names just for the sake of YouTube and, all the good stuff. And I don't like doing that on YouTube. But they know me very well. I know them very well. If you're watching this video, shout out to y'all, right? We laughed about this like years later in high school. It was hilarious. But anyways, so, ever since I was 5, I noticed that, how I felt about girls. That was the first time that, I knew that I thought I liked somebody. And I told my mom, there's 2 girls, they're cute, and, this and that, and all that good stuff. And I was like, I want them to be my girlfriend. And my mom was like, so you want 2 girlfriends? First of all, you're too young for 1 girlfriend. You know what I'm saying? It was hilarious. And, this carried over to crushes here and there throughout school. I remember I had a crush on a girl when I was in 5th grade, and we went skating and at this place called Putty Hill. And I remember that she was skating with this guy that she liked. I asked her to skate. She said, no, I'm going to skate with another guy. Oof. I think that was my first heartbreak. Oh, man. My first girlfriend actually came about when I was in 7th grade. And we only were girlfriend and boyfriend for 2 days. Yeah, 2 days. Go ahead and laugh. Middle school love ain't really real, right? So dated for 2 days. We broke up because it just felt too weird. We just want to be friends. It was a mutual thing. And then I had crushes here and there. I remember my first crush in high school was this Puerto Rican chick, and I think that was my freshman year. And everybody seemed to have a crush on her, but it seemed like with me, I was the one that was able to get her attention for a short period of time, just by authentically just being myself. I wasn't no football star. I was in the marching band. You know what I'm saying? That was it. I was in the marching band and I was in Boy Scouts. That's what people knew me as the marching band, the marching Boy Scout. So I just always believed in genuinely being myself when it came to being around women, and we'll talk more about that very soon as well. I think I had my first relationship in high school. My first official relationship was my sophomore year, which was with a girl that I was in the poetry club with, and we did it for like a week, and it felt weird, and we were just like, yeah, no. But she was mad cool though. That was the homie for the rest of the high school. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you date people and you just like, nah, this ain't gonna work. Um, but I guess my first official serious relationship was my junior year, my serious relationship. And I just remember she was, what, a year younger than me? I think she was in 10th and I was in 11th. And I remember we were in the marching band together. And it's funny because but I had MySpace at the time. So oftentimes you will put your girlfriend or your boyfriend within your, because you had like a top 10, top 15, top 20 list. And I would always have a top 20 list. And my girlfriend was like always number two, because number one would be like one of my family members and I would rotate them, blah, 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 blah. And I remember there was one time she took me off the top 10 list. And you in high school, you notice little stupid stuff like that. And I'm just like, yo, what's going on? And I remember there was a guy, and she was like, oh, that's my cousin. That wasn't her cousin. She cheated on me. I know some of y'all like, dang, Marcus, will you ever catch a break? Eventually. We're going to get there. But why am I telling all these stories, these little snippets of stories? And one day, I think I'll go into a longer series, maybe about some of these things. Not all of them. Maybe. We'll see. Or maybe I won't. Now that I think about it, nah, probably won't. I'll save that for maybe a book that I'll publish at some point. But I say all this to say, because I had to learn a lot of things about women, about relationships, about how they worked. I know one of the biggest things that was kind of a focus point for me was when I was in high school, everybody was kind of like exploring and trying to figure themselves out. Some people started being physically intimate. I never forget that. Actually, I started hearing about that when I was in middle school. And you like, ooh, middle school? Yeah. I had classmates talking about that in middle school. And I know some of y'all probably might cringe at this. Trust me, I cringed back then too, because I'm just like, we too young for this. You know what I'm saying? I was a virgin when I was in high school. You know what I'm saying? I didn't, the V card stayed with me until I was in college. Because when I was in high school, I had the mindset of, I'm going to wait till I get married before I'm intimate with anybody. Because I just knew it was the right thing to do. It was what I was taught in church. It was what I was taught by my parents. My parents had me at a very young age. My dad was 20. My mom was 19 when I was conceived. So it was one of those things for me where I had the mindset of, I don't want to be no young father. And God knows I don't want to get married to the wrong woman either, because I had been taught that marriage was important. I had a father and a grandfather that had taught me how to respect women, how to, understand women, and also the game of dating and whatnot and so on and so forth, and how to maintain masculine frame and this and that and so on and so forth, to some degree. Not all of it, but I got a few jewels from them. Some stuff I had to learn as time went on. And, one thing that was in my mind was, I'm not having children with nobody until I marry them. And then, like I said, at the time being, I was like, I'm also not being physically intimate with nobody until I'm married. And of course, that changed when I got to college. But needless to say, high school was high school. Went to college. One of the things that a good friend of mine, his name is Vinny, told me was, hey, he told me this my freshman year, don't be dating nobody in college. And I wish I would have listened to him, only because he told me the one thing I need to focus on was my schoolwork, having fun, and my music. And I'm not saying that women were a huge distraction while I was in college. They really weren't, but it was a little bit of time wasted. It was somewhat of a minor distraction, but I talked to a lot of women when I was in college. One thing my friends will tell me is I was never afraid to shoot my shot. I was Steph Curry with the three in terms of not necessarily always making it, but just the fact that I'm gonna shoot it from anywhere. I'm gonna shoot from half court. I'm gonna shoot from the sideline. I'm gonna shoot from the top of the building. And hey, if I make it in, I make it in. I'm gonna shoot all the way from the other side of the court. I did not care. Whenever we went out to parties and clubs, I used to go to clubs and parties in college and stuff, I would always be the one to, even if I wasn't trying to dance with a woman, I would be the one to approach her. I would like be the guy that would go and approach a woman in front of her friends, introduce myself to her friends, and then talk to her. Because in my mindset, I'm like, either they're gonna laugh at me, or they're gonna think they're admirable, or they're gonna look at me like, shoot, I got standards. Why are you talking to me? I didn't care. And I think that's what built my confidence up with talking to women, right? Because I knew at the end, I had a goal in mind. And I always tell men all the time, if you have a goal in mind with a woman or just women in general, it makes it so much easier to approach them. My goal at the end of the day was I was marriage minded. I was looking for a wife. I've always been looking for a wife. And I'm not saying that every woman was my wife. Oh, definitely not. Or that every woman was going to be my wife that I met. No, I knew that. But how do you know where you're going to get to if you don't try? You can't hope and make an attempt for something if you don't even bother to start. You feel what I'm saying? So that was the mindset that I had for the most part. And so, I had a couple relationships in college and whatnot. I had two women that I had a pretty strong relationship with. One of them I thought I was going to marry. Didn't end up happening, and that's okay. And, even when I was in grad school for both Bethune-Cookman and UCF. Now, UCF was a little different. UCF, I didn't really get into too many relationships for grad school. Well, for grad school in general, I didn't get into too many relationships. And then, eventually it got to a point where I was trying different avenues. I was meeting women in different places. I tried dating apps. It worked for a few years in terms of short little fun, but it didn't really satisfy my needs for anything serious. The one time I thought it was something serious was when a woman actually ended up ghosting me and then coming back and breaking up with me. I know y'all still thinking, Marcus, dang, you don't catch a break, bruh. Trust me, I've had some good women in my life, okay? I'm not going to sit here and be like all of them were bad. But I also don't harp too much on it because I know at the end of the day, I was responsible for choosing these women. So I can't get mad. I got to hold myself accountable for the fact that, hey, I chose them. But I also had to learn the game. I had to operate in a different manner. Again, my dad, my grandfather, and my stepdad taught me a few things. Not a lot, but again, they taught me a few gems, and there was things I had to learn as time went on, which kind of goes to the next thing I'm going to talk about, the relationship-minded portion. One of the things I had to learn was that there are a lot of women that want a finished product. And there's nothing wrong with that because at the end of the day, you got to think about hypergamy, and you also have to consider the fact that a woman is going to be on survival mode. Now, what I mean by survival mode, I'm not saying that every woman is on survival mode because she's been through trauma or anything like that. There are a lot of women that have actually healed from their trauma, and there are some women that haven't really had that much trauma. You know what I'm saying? So it's not trauma-based. I think a lot of times men, their minds go there when they hear women talking about survival mode. No, that's not true. You got to make that clear. But women want a protector, they want a provider, and they want a leader. They want someone who is essentially going to help them, you know what I'm saying? And not just necessarily help them, because that gets taken out of context, but someone who is going to lead, someone who's going to be the best for them ultimately. That's why when men oftentimes get mad about stuff like that, I'm like, no, don't get mad, because it's your responsibility to be the best version that you can be. Because think about it. I'm not going to want a woman who's not trying to be the best woman that she can be. So why should that woman want me if I'm not trying to be the best that I can be? So when cats get mad about that, I'll be like, no, don't get mad. That's the way it is. That's how it's supposed to be. God created us as the stronger vessel. What does that mean? That doesn't mean you're trying to overpower and overrule a woman. No, but that simply means that there's things that we need to be able to handle. There's going to be times of provision. There's going to be times where we need to be a leader. And if you really want the woman that you desire, you got to be those things, or at least be working to those things, right? And that's what a woman needs to see. I'm not saying that you have to be a finished product, because Lord knows I'm definitely not a finished product. We're going to talk about that in a second. But you have to at least be at a point to where it's like, I'm working towards being the best version of me that I can be. And even when I think I become the best version of me I can be, no, there's most certainly more. And I have to keep building up to that. Bottom line, right? So I had to learn that. And it wasn't until maybe 2-3 years ago that it finally sunk in my mind, Marcus, there's 2 reasons why you ain't married. Number 1, you ain't done becoming the best version that you can be. And number 2, most importantly, which leads me to the marriage mindset, you not doing it God's way. Now, I'm not going to go into detail what I mean by that, because this is going to be too long of a video. We're already about 16 minutes in just about. But I will say this. A lot of times I would often say, God, why do I not have a wife? I see all these other people doing this, that, and third. First of all, you should never compare yourself to other people. So what's up with me? Right? I'm trying to do everything your way. I've always been marriage minded. I've always tried to have a woman's intentions at heart. And it wasn't until very recently that God literally told me, you don't know how to court. And if you want my daughter, you got to learn. And it was like, dang. And you know that feeling where you know God, right? And you can't argue with him. That was me. It was like, oh, well, okay, all right. I don't know, he has a point. And granted, I've always done my best to treat women with respect, with kindness, with dignity. I've always done my best to make sure that she was good. I've always did my best to make sure I was a leader, to make sure that I was doing what I needed to do as a man. But you got to realize all of that is for naught if you're not doing it his way. Because the world has one way of doing it, but then God has another way to do it. And yes, there are some similarities between the world and, the godly way of doing it, but they're not the same, because oftentimes the world way of doing it can be tainted. You get what I'm saying? So I had to learn that. But I've always wanted to be a husband. I've always wanted to be a father. And as of the recording this video, praise God, I am pretty much in a relationship. You know what I'm saying? And it is a blessing. It's a blessing. I have a wonderful woman who, I'm just going to put it out there, I believe she's going to be my wife. Yes, I said it. I literally said it. Y'all like, what, Marcus? Yeah, I'm dead serious about that. And hey, we'll talk about that in a future video, because it ain't the time to talk about that just yet. But just know, God is preparing me to head in that direction. I don't know what to expect. I don't know what I'm finna get into. I don't know what's finna happen. All I know is I'm putting my trust in him, and that's it. But I say all that to say this. I've always been the type of person that wanted a forever thing. I was never a temporary guy. I was never, I'm going to just smash chicks and that's it type of guy. That just was not in my nature. That's not what was taught to me, and that was not who I am as a man. I like the idea of waking up to an individual the very next day. I mean, not right now. I ain't living with nobody till marriage, but I like the idea of building life together. I like the idea of growing old together. I like the idea of having a kid or two and watching them grow and, showing them how to take over the world. Yeah, I said it, take over the world. And, I look forward to so many different things when that time happens, right? People want to test drive all these whips. My girlfriend, she uses this analogy well. People want to test drive all these whips when you don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. When you see what you like, just go for it. And if it ain't your fit, okay, move on. And I know, yes, I've said on this channel that, there's nothing wrong with dating multiple people. And I mean, if that's your stilo, cool. I'm not going to stop you from, you doing what you do. But I have a hard time talking to multiple women. In fact, the one time that I tried to do that, it didn't backfire. I got away with it. But it was too much to handle. And I was just like, yo, I'd rather talk to one person at one time because I had enough of an abundance mindset that if this don't work out with you, I go to somebody else. And I'm going to admit, there have been times where I've struggled being single. I've been more single in recent years than I have not. Praise God. But being single for me was a bit of a struggle only because I just always desired to be with somebody. But there were things that I had to learn. There were lessons that I had to take in, which we'll get into that in another video because this video has gone on way too long. The bottom line is this. You as an individual have to determine what is it like for you to be relationship minded. Are you a relationship type of person? Are you a marriage type of person? Are you just a casual type of person? Nobody is here to judge you for whatever type of person you are, or at least you're not. I'm not, I should say. But I think that's very important in determining which direction you'll go at with people. And that can change. You might be somebody who doesn't desire relationships, and as you get older, you might desire one. You might be someone who did desire some at one point in time, and you're now realizing, hey, that's not really my thing anymore. So you got to find out what fits for you. I know for me, I've always been marriage-minded. I've always wanted to be a husband, always wanted to be a father, and I just pray that God continues to work on me as he prepares me for that, and seeing whatever it'll look like, right? So, yep, it's Marcus Frazier from Teachable Tuesdays, here to motivate you, encourage you, and inspire you to be a better you. Thank you so much for joining me today. Greatly, greatly appreciate it. We're going to move on to the final episode next week. And since it's the final episode, I'll just go ahead and tell you what it is. There's going to be the New Life series, and it's going to be my walk or my new walk with Christ. A lot of things have been happening as of recent in a very short period of time, and I want to sit down and talk to you guys about these things and discuss it. I'm going to be talking to you about some updates for the channel for next week overall. I know we talked about the Saturday updates next week. Just as a reminder, there are no more Long Car Rock Chronicles temporarily. Let me not scare nobody. Let me rephrase my wording. It's going to be on a hiatus. So if you didn't know, now you know. Be on the lookout for the Tekken Tag Tournament Bowl that's coming out this Saturday. I will be posting an exhibition match sometime this week. I'm thinking Friday or Thursday, something like that. I'm trying to remember. I gotta look at my schedule. Guys, I've been posting so many videos lately. This is probably the most ahead in my schedule that I've been with my videos. And I am so grateful because that has been one of my goals as a YouTuber. I follow a lot of YouTubers like Now to Explain, like Scott's Thoughts, who actually, my Dry Bread, who's working on their videos in advance. And some of these YouTubers actually post their videos well in advance. That way, Squidgy is another one, shout out to him. And that way, if something happens and they get sick, and I know Squidgy talked about this in one of his live streams, he'll have content, preloaded. So let's say he has, because I know he says from time to time he gets sick, and he preloads content. So he'll have content for 2 or 3 months, just in case he's not well enough to do the voice recordings, because, a lot of these YouTubers, they do a lot longer forms of content. So I know that takes a toll on them. But yeah, if you're wondering why you see so much content as of lately, that's the reason why. And for those of you who are newly subscribed, thank you. Greatly, greatly appreciate you as always. For those of you who've been on the channel for a minute, thank you. Really, really appreciate you. We are celebrating 5.5 years. 5.5 years of being on YouTube, and it's only going to get better from here. Until next time, y'all, peace, love you, take care of yourselves, God bless.